Hello and welcome to another A Tippling Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. I am going to talk to you today about philosophy and philosophy of morality, and I'm going to link it to the Ukraine war. So this is a little bit of an extra video that hopefully is interesting for people outside of the war context maybe, but it's blending the two interests of mine, philosophy and talking about this war. So what I'm going to do is going to just set out my philosophical nuggets first and establish what I'm trying to say in terms of philosophy, and then see how that applies to the war. So I'm not going to bring the war in yet, just going to lay the groundwork. So what is the groundwork? Well, I want to talk to you about morality. Where morality, there are different ways of talking about morality. I'm going to talk about something called normative morality, or prescriptive morality, what you should do. So whenever you talk about should and ought, you are talking about things in the moral dimension. Okay, what I should do, what you should do, what we should all do. Politics is morality. It's like what we should all do, what the government should do, or what this nation should do, what society should do. Okay, so politics is morality. And when you talk about an army, right, it's like when you talk about the strategy, what should they do here? Well, that's arguably a moral dimension, but certainly I would say it's a goal orientated thing. What do I mean by that? Well, when we're doing morality, it's like, why should I be good? You could kind of try and make an argument for some kind of intrinsic goodness of something. Why be good just to be good? But it's kind of like always prompts this question, well, why should I be good? And if you're talking evolutionary terms, like morality, those who think that morality is an evolved kind of set of traits and behaviors in animals, we look at morality in other primates and stuff. You're like, well, why do certain primates have a sense of justice, right? Why do we look at capuchin monkeys and see that they get really angry when they don't see justice in they get given a token, or they give a token, a capuchin monkey, and this is a work of Franz de Waal, and they get given a bit of a grape in response, and it's, oh, that's brilliant. So they're two capuchin monkeys, they're both getting great bits of grape when they hand over a token. Then when one capuchin hands over a token and gets given a bit of cucumber, and they don't really like cucumber's not as nice as grape, and he sees his mate or her mate over there getting a grape, gets really angry, has this sense of justice, like, but we've done the same thing, and how come my friend here is getting a bit of grape and I'm just getting a bit of cucumber? This is really unfair. So gets really angry, and what we can see is the kind of proto behaviors of morality in these social animals. And the idea is that morality is functional. So it has a functional benefit for different species. We are moral because as a social species, it allows us to actually thrive, and therefore allows our genes to replicate and stuff. And people with religion will say other things about morality involve God and things like that. But still, it's like, why be good? I'm being good. So a religious person might say, so that I can emulate God, or so that I can get into heaven and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I wouldn't say that, but whatever. The idea is that morality seems to be goal oriented, and we are working towards a goal. So when you ask me, why am I good? It's because I want the world to look like this. In other words, if I want the world to look like this, then I and we should act like that. Okay? What I've done there is produce a conditional sentence. So let's have a look at a conditional sentence. Well, a conditional sentence is made up of two ideas, or two components, a protasis and an apodosis. A protasis is the if bit, and the apodosis is the then bit. So you might say, let's look at some examples given here. If he had the time, he would definitely come to the party. Or, if he had played better, then he would have won the match. Or if I want my friends to like me, then I need to be kind. Okay, so you get this if and then in conditional statements, and the protasis and apodosis is important in when you talk about moral thinking and moral philosophy. Now, if I said to you, you should put oil in your car engine, right? You automatically are assume I've not given you the protasis. I'm not giving you the if part of that. I've just said you should put oil in your engine. When I'm saying that, what I'm really saying is if you want your engine to run well, so that's a protasis, then you should put oil in your engine. That's the apodosis. The problem is we don't often put in a protasis and we just make assumptions. But of course, that can go a little bit wrong. So it might be, if I go to you, oh, you should put oil in your engine. You say, well, actually, no. I'm a scientist who's doing some investigations into what happens when I don't put oil in an engine. So actually, I shouldn't put oil in the engine because I'm trying to test what happens to it when I don't put oil in there. So we need to be careful. And problem is, we don't always go through every day expressing full conditional sentences to everything we're saying. There's a lot of assumptions we have in what we say to each other. But in terms of morality, that's certainly the case. So you should do this. You should not lie. Okay, you should not lie because if we so what happens is you're hiding the if part of this sentence when you say things like you shouldn't lie. It's like if you want a society where we can trust each other, then you shouldn't lie. If everyone lied, then Immanuel Kant talked about the universalism or the universality of sort of moral diktats like that. So what would the world look like if everyone did that? So if everyone lied, it would, be a complete nightmare. Or if most people lied, you just wouldn't know. So what was going on? So in order for society to function well, you need everyone to be truthful, right? As much as can be practically possible. So we have these rules of thumb. Uh, but you often hear those rules just given to you without the if part, just as the apodosis. You should do this. It's like, okay, but actually, if we want this scenario to take place, then we should do that. Okay, so if I want if I want the air to be clean, then we should use cars that burn clean energy or something like that. It's like not just we should have cars that burn clean energy or have no exhaust fumes or whatever. Like that's kind of like arbitrary. You need to contextualize that with the protasis. Okay, if I want clean air in my city, then cars should have no exhaust fumes, and we should run cars with no exhaust fumes, etc., etc. You kind of get the point. Okay, right. Let's take this back to the Ukraine war. That's enough preamble. That's my philosophical preamble. What I've been talking about all this time is well, uh, you know, what should the Ukrainians do? Because I think they should attack down here, but then they should attack down here and go through here. And Starobilsk is a great place, and blah 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 blah. And you come up with all these sort of different theories as to what the Ukrainians should do. So let's break this down to what we've been talking about. The Ukrainian army should attack here because the front lines will be a bit shorter, or the Ukrainian army should attack here because X, Y, and Z. But really, you're kind of forgetting to really discuss the goal. And the problem is we don't know the goals. And I hinted at this earlier in my extra video earlier today. But we don't know what the Ukrainian intelligence and military administration and leaders and NATO and other players in this like game of military chess here. We don't know what they've got in their minds and what the end goal is. And the end goal is obviously the big end goal is liberate all of the territory that has been occupied. So the end goal is, well, we want all of this land to be ours. But actually, before you get there, you're going to break it down into much smaller goals. And those small goals are going to be stepping stones towards that greater goal. but it's those stepping stones we don't really know. So we have to kind of trust that the Ukrainians know what they're doing. They do seem to be knowing what they're doing. Obviously, they're having some of the best military minds helping them, and they're doing a really good job themselves. It's not to take away from their own sort of military acumen, but they are softening up targets. They're hitting logistics. It's slow but steady, but perhaps that's the best thing to do, which is make sure that they have all their ducks in a row before they march on and whatnot. It is really easy to say the Ukrainians should do this, but in order for us to say that, when we say this in the YouTube comments threads, when I say this in a video, I need to be making sure I'm getting my protasis established, which is, if the Ukrainians want to establish X, then they need to do Y. So just throwing around these things, which I've done, which is, they should hit Starobilsk. That would be my next goal. That would be my primary goal there. It's like, okay, well, why should that be my primary goal? What's the objective here? Any kind of moral statement like this, or any should or ought statement, really requires the goal. It's goal oriented. So if I want X to happen, then then we should do Y. So what is the X that I want to be? And that's the first thing I need to try and work out in terms of this map, in terms of the strategy of what's going on in Ukraine. When we have tippling philosophers who meet, so originally my blog name, and then it became my kind of journalist hub where I write now, and this YouTube channel sort of 10 years ago, is the a tippling philosopher. That's because the tippling philosophers are a bunch of people. We don't do it so often now because we're old and got families and whatnot, but we meet down a pub and discuss things, all things philosophical. And last few times we met, you always get to talk about morality, and it's like, guys, we're arguing about stuff down here, and we need to work out the thing up here, which is the big goal, the bloody big goal. So that there's no point talking about what we should do, even in like the UK. So I'm from Britain, but wherever you're from, whatever your nation is doing politically, it's like, we should do this. Okay, that works on this level to this country, but then what? Why should we do this? Why should we do that? And why should we work together to do this as nations? And what we end up blindly on this journey towards somewhere that we don't know, because we haven't set out what the goal is. We always need to be thinking about what is the world that we are aiming for? What do we all want the world to look like? Once you've got a really clear, and the problem is that's massively, massively difficult. It's like, what would utopia look like, or a reasonable kind of like practical version of utopia? What would the best version of this Earth look like? What do I want this world to be like for me, for my children? And once I've got that really clearly in my head, then I can work out, well, what's the best way of getting there? What do we need to do together to get to this end goal? Remember, it's all about being goal oriented. So, yet again, back to the strategy. What are the goals? Yes, okay, liberation of what do I want the world to look like? In this case, that maps out to, okay, I want Ukraine to win this war handily so that they liberate all of this territory. Okay, brilliant. That's a goal there. Okay, let's break that down. What do we need to do in order to achieve that? Do we need to kill as many Russian troops as possible? I say we, I'm talking about Ukraine. But as a Ukrainian, sort of, as Zelensky, it's like, do we need to kill as many Russian soldiers as possible? Well, not necessarily. Okay, do we need to liberate as much land as possible? Do we need to just drive our soldiers into different places and put flags in different villages? Well, actually, yeah, eventually that's going to happen, but that's not what we need to do now. Okay, do we need to strategically knock out logistics hubs? Probably. That's probably the number one objective at the moment. And therefore, if that's the objective, does that mean? I mean, that's the objective with things like HIMARS and potential drone attacks and other kind of ways of hitting targets. But is that also the objective for the troops at the moment? So when you're talking about what's going on between Svatova and Kremina, right, and we're talking about it's about going on behind, I don't know. So let's look at my map here and take it over so you can see, because my face is a bit big. Actually, let's make my face a bit smaller. I've done all my kind of chit chat. So we've got Kremina, all these towns, Rubizhny, Lysychansk, Severodonetsk. So is it a case of you know coming round here to take out logistics? It's not about liberating, but it's about logistics. So okay, well, is it more important then to take out Svatova and actually head for Starobilsk than to come round here? Because if we want to knock out, if logistics is our primary purpose, then what we do with our troops needs to be entirely defined by what our purpose is. It is goal orientated. Where we send our troops isn't just about, oh, let's go and take this city because I really like this city, or it's my hometown, or it's this important cultural place. No, you need to be far more strategic than that. It's like, okay, what are the places around this whole map that are the most important for logistics? And I'm assuming that logistics is the number one priority here, the number one goal, but I don't even know that. There are generals that are working this stuff out and know way more than I ever will. But if that is the case, then what are your primary objectives around um, the whole of Ukraine here? Well, it's going to be places like junctions like that, like this, like here, like Ilovaisk here. It's places behind Horlivka. It's up here, Shakhtarsk, and all these other sort of places. And you'll find that those are the places that are being hit repeatedly. Tokmak's another one, which you can see is a road junction, as well as being near to a railway line that is the main railway line accessing the west there. Okay, well, is that then not just about higher Mars, but about where we send our troops and how we send our troops and what we do around Kremina? Is it more important to starve the troops and people of their stuff than take these cities? So the opinion for me would be that if you're thinking about Kremlin and places like this, I would not be bothered. I would not be bothered at all about taking these towns, right? Um, I would be bothered about encircling them. But I wouldn't go near. I wouldn't go near having any kind of urban warfare here, because that's going to be. So again, what are the objectives? So go for logistics, but we know from Kherson, or we don't know, but someone was saying, and I talked about this, that one of the things about Kherson that makes it all make sense, the way that the Ukrainians did Kherson, which was to go in really slowly, starve out the Russians, and the Russians ran away themselves. It made a lot of sense if one of the primary objectives of the Ukrainians was not to lose troops. And when you understand not losing troops as being a primary objective of theirs, then what Ukraine should do follows from that. So if it's like hit logistics, not lose troops, then that defines what Ukraine should do here, which is not go into any cities. So they should, my opinion would be, not that I know my ass from my elbow here, but my opinion would be, doing stuff like this, doing stuff like that, where they're cutting road lines, they are cutting, train lines, and they are not getting involved in attacking cities, and then, somehow taking out something like that. Maybe doing that with troops, maybe doing that with rockets alone, but going nowhere near cities. And there you go. So it's going to be really interesting to see over the next couple of weeks if there is this breakthrough, for example, in Krasnyorachensky or somewhere around here, what they do after they break through these lines and across the P66. Where do these troops go now? Which direction? Literally, which direction do they go in? There are different options here, or all of the above. It's going to be very very interesting. But bear in mind, whatever they do is going to be defined by what their objectives are. So whatever the decision is made, you might think that's really weird, that's stupid, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, but you've probably got a different goal to what the Ukrainians have, and they will do whatever fits in line with what their objective is. I mean, that's obvious, right? But it's about trying to get inside the Ukrainians' heads, uh, and the NATO advisors and whoever else is involved in making these decisions to work out, yeah, okay, what are your objectives here? So they've got the territory objective here. So the ultimate objective of liberating all the territory, yeah, they did that really well, but they also did it by not losing any troops. And if their objective was to take this region without losing troops, then they did an absolutely fantastic job. If it was to kill as many Russians as possible and take as much equipment, and damage as much and destroy as much equipment as possible, then they didn't do a very good job. So you measure the success against the goals that they have set in place. So I think that's yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see where they go from here in terms of Kherson, in terms of Zaporizhia, and in terms of Luhansk up here. As far as what they do around the Donetsk line, my opinion is that this is just a fixing game. So the Ukrainians are just going to defend for as long as possible to fix as many Russian troops here as possible, where they'll be ground down and lose as many troops as the Ukrainians can make them lose, and equipment until they've been, debilitated to a sufficient degree. But it fixes the Russian troops in here so that the Ukrainians can do things elsewhere. Um, and I guess that's that. Anyway, I don't know. Am I making sense? Let me know. Please put your opinions down below. Thank you for bearing with me, doing a bit of philosophy and trying to apply that to war strategizing. It may or may not have worked. I'm sure you'll let me know. Anyway, thank you so much for all your support. Please like, subscribe, share. All the ways that you can support my channel are down below in the description. But please check out my ATP Geo channel and subscribe to that as well. It might be a slower migration than I was hoping because I'm waiting for YouTube to review that channel as part of the monetization process, and that can take up to a month, so goodness knows how long it's going to take. Anyway, I am in the midst of migrating there. Thank you again, and see you later.